When the bikers cornered him, they thought he was just another easy mark. They were wrong. Dead wrong. Watch as calm turns to chaos in seconds. Like if you're in for the ride, subscribe for stories that defy expectations, and comment if you've ever underestimated someone at your peril. The wind had a bite to it that afternoon as Marcus pulled his truck into the gravel parking lot of Hank's Diner, a worn-out roadside joint just off Highway 101, where time seemed to stall and strangers weren't always welcome. The open sign buzzed dimly against the dusty glass window, flickering with just enough life to signal it was still in business. A lone gas station stood nearby, its pumps rusted and forgotten, the wind swirling dust around them. Marcus cut the engine, took a moment to glance at the diner, then grabbed his wallet and cap. Inside, the diner was exactly what he expected. Checkered floors, vinyl booths split at the seams, and a jukebox in the corner that hadn't played a song in decades. The smell of burnt coffee and stale grease hung in the air like a bad memory. A waitress with tired eyes wiped down a counter that was already clean, muttering something to the short-order cook behind her. Marcus walked in, the bell above the door jangling loud enough to turn heads that lingered. There were no smiles, no polite nods, just stares. The kind of stares you feel before you see them, curious, cautious, and heavy with something unspoken. At a corner table, a group of bikers sat, draped in leather vests and dark sunglasses despite the dim lighting. Their laughter dropped into silence the moment Marcus entered. Unbothered, he adjusted his baseball cap, kept his shoulders relaxed, and headed for a booth near the window. He liked facing exits. Old habits die hard. The waitress approached him, her pen tapping nervously against her notepad. "What'll it be?" she asked, her voice flat. "Just a cheeseburger and fries," Marcus replied softly. "And a coffee, black." The woman scribbled it down without looking at him, her eyes darting toward the bikers who were now watching Marcus like a hawk circling its prey. Marcus didn't engage. He just sat calm and still, tracing the rim of his coffee cup as if the room around him didn't exist. But it did exist, and it was getting louder. One of the bikers, a broad man with a thick beard and knuckles tattooed in black ink, leaned back in his chair, speaking loud enough for the whole diner to hear. "Well, would you look at that? Seems we got ourselves a tourist." The others snickered, low and guttural. Marcus ignored him. Beardman wasn't done. "Hey, buddy, you deaf or just rude?" The waitress returned with Marcus's coffee, her hand trembling slightly as she placed it on the table. Marcus offered her a faint smile and a soft, "Thank you." It wasn't her fight. She didn't need to feel guilty for walking away, and she did just that, fast. Marcus took a sip of his coffee. He didn't need to look up to know all eyes were on him now. He could feel the weight of their gaze. The room had taken sides without him saying a word. Outside, a truck rumbled past, gravel crunching beneath its tires. Inside, the air thickened like the calm before a storm. The silence wouldn't last much longer, and Marcus knew it. The tension in the diner felt like a held breath, a moment stretched too thin. The bikers had stopped pretending. All eyes locked on Marcus, waiting for a response he didn't feel the need to give. "Maybe he's just shy," Beardman jeered, his lips twisting into a smug grin. "Or maybe he's lost. Ain't much for his kind out here." That did it. A low, cruel laugh rolled through the group like a wave hitting rocks. The diner wasn't big, but in moments like this, it felt suffocating. Marcus took another slow sip of coffee, unbothered as though he hadn't heard them. He didn't flinch, didn't twitch. If anything, he looked bored. That silence, his calm, only made them angrier. The scrape of a chair echoed loudly as Beardman pushed away from the table. Boots thudded against the floor as he swaggered forward, his presence heavy. The others sat back, eager for a show. The waitress stood behind the counter, frozen, her eyes darting between Marcus and the advancing biker. Beardman stopped just beside Marcus's booth, close enough that his leather vest reeked of sweat and cheap cigarettes. "Hey, I'm talking to you, boy." The word hit the air like a slap, sharp, cruel, deliberate. Marcus didn't move, didn't look up. Instead, he set his coffee down gently on the saucer. "Something I can help you with?" he said finally, his voice even, measured. The question wasn't combative. If anything, it was polite, but the way he said it, soft, deliberate, stopped the biker for a beat. Beardman narrowed his eyes. "You're sitting where you don't belong." "Don't you know how things work around here?" Behind him, the other bikers snickered. One of them, a wiry man with stringy hair, called out, "Show him, Travis. Teach him some manners." Travis, a fitting name for a man so eager to prove himself. Marcus exhaled quietly, a breath barely noticeable, but there. "I'm just here for lunch, that's all." The calm set Travis off. He wanted a reaction, something to justify what came next. He slammed a fist on the table, rattling the salt shaker. "I don't think you heard me, friend." Marcus's gaze lifted slowly, locking onto Travis, and in that instant, something shifted. It wasn't aggression in Marcus's eyes, nor was it fear. No, what Travis saw was stillness. The kind that doesn't break, doesn't move. It unsettled him, though he didn't show it. A beat passed. "Back off," Marcus said quietly. Not a plea, not a threat, just a fact. Travis snorted, masking his discomfort with bravado. "Or what?" The diner went dead silent again. No one moved. Even the cook had stopped flipping burgers. Travis's patience snapped. "You're going to learn some respect today." He reached out to grab Marcus by the collar, and Marcus's hand moved quick as a snake, catching Travis's wrist midair, his grip iron tight. The biker froze, startled. "Don't," Marcus said softly, his voice still calm but carrying an edge now, a warning. For a moment, Travis didn't know what to do. The other bikers were watching, goading him silently to act. He yanked his arm free with a jerk and stumbled back a step, snarling to save face. "Think you're tough, huh?" Travis spat, flexing his hand. "We'll see about that." He turned toward the others. "Get up, boys." Chairs scraped, the air thickened. The rest of the bikers, 5 in total, rose to their feet one by one, smirking as they cracked knuckles and rolled shoulders. Marcus stayed seated, watching them. No fear, no anger, just a calm stillness that seemed impossible. The waitress, trembling, grabbed the phone behind the counter. "Don't!" she started, but Travis cut her off with a glare. "Put it down," he barked, and she shrank back, helpless. Travis turned back to Marcus. "You've got 2 choices, pal. Walk out that door right now, or we take this outside." Marcus didn't move, didn't blink. He set his coffee cup down, the sound almost inaudible. "I'd rather finish my lunch," he said simply. Travis grinned like he'd won something. "Fine, we'll do it here then." The bikers moved in closer, forming a half circle around the booth. They thought they had him trapped, thought the numbers mattered. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The diner had become a stage, every person an unwilling audience member. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the clinking of utensils had stopped. The bikers loomed, their shadows stretching across Marcus like threats. Travis, eager to reclaim his pride, cracked his knuckles and smirked. "Last chance, tough guy. Walk out now before we put you down." Marcus stared at him, unblinking. There was no shift in his posture, no tensing of muscles. He looked almost bored, and that made Travis furious. "You just don't get it," Travis spat, and without warning he lunged. The moment moved in slow motion for everyone else, but for Marcus it was instinct, like breathing. Marcus shifted, not a flinch, not a shuffle, a precise move practiced to perfection. He slid out of the booth in one fluid motion, grabbing Travis's wrist mid-swing, redirecting his force. The biker stumbled forward, caught off guard. Before he could react, Marcus twisted Travis's arm behind his back, guiding him straight into the table. A loud thud echoed through the diner as the biker's chest slammed into the laminate surface. "One down." The others hesitated, startled. Marcus released Travis, letting him crumble to the floor, groaning. He turned toward the others, his eyes calm but firm. "You don't want this," he said softly, almost like advice. But bikers don't back down, not when there's an audience. The wiry man with stringy hair was next, charging with a yell, fists swinging wild. Marcus sidestepped him like water flowing around a rock, then planted an elbow into the man's gut. The biker wheezed, folding over as Marcus used his own momentum to send him sprawling into a chair. 2 down. The remaining 3 bikers moved together now, realizing this wasn't a bar fight. This was something else. A sharp sense of panic replaced their bravado, but it was too late. The largest of them grabbed for Marcus's shoulder, a mistake. Marcus turned sharply, trapping the man's arm and dropping him to the floor with a clean sweep of his leg. Before the biker could react, Marcus knelt, pressing a knee into his back, whispering, "Stay down." The man froze, gasping for air, and didn't move. 3 down. Another came at Marcus from behind, wielding a chair. The attack was sloppy, desperate. Marcus ducked effortlessly, rising to grab the chair and yank it free from the biker's hands. The man stumbled back, off balance, and Marcus closed the distance, a controlled shove sending him into a booth where he collapsed in a heap. 4 down. The last biker hesitated, eyes wide, hands trembling. He looked around at his friends, bruised, broken, humiliated, then at Marcus, who hadn't even broken a sweat. Marcus tilted his head slightly, a silent question. "You're done," he said. The biker swallowed hard, then turned and bolted for the door, the bell above it jangling wildly as he fled into the parking lot. 5 down. The diner went still. Marcus exhaled, adjusting his baseball cap as he glanced at the mess. The bikers groaned from the floor, too shocked or winded to get up. Travis, still slumped over the table, looked up with a mixture of pain and disbelief. Marcus looked him in the eyes and said softly, "I told you to back off." The silence that followed was deafening, but it wasn't the fight people would remember. It was what came next. The diner sat frozen. Nobody moved. The silence felt heavier than the fight itself. The waitress stood behind the counter, her hand still on the phone she never got the chance to use. The cook peeked through the kitchen window, eyes wide, his spatula hanging uselessly in his hand. Marcus straightened up, his breathing steady, his posture relaxed. If you hadn't seen what just happened, you'd think he'd simply finished tying his shoe. Travis groaned as he pushed himself halfway up, his bruised pride far worse than his aching ribs. "What the hell? Who are you?" he muttered, his voice a mix of pain and confusion. Marcus looked down at him, his face calm, unreadable. He didn't smirk, didn't gloat. "Just a guy getting lunch," he said quietly. Travis glared at him through bloodshot eyes. "You ain't normal." "What the hell are you?" Marcus looked around the diner. The eyes on him weren't filled with fear. They were filled with awe, respect. People weren't used to seeing someone that calm, that capable. He sighed softly and shook his head. "You don't want to know." The wiry biker, still slumped against a chair, coughed out, "You military or something?" Marcus didn't answer. He turned away from them, heading back to his booth. His plate was still there, burger and fries untouched, the coffee cup half full. He picked up a fry and took a bite as if the last 5 minutes hadn't happened. The waitress finally moved, stepping forward cautiously, her voice shaky. "Sir, are you okay?" Marcus looked up and gave her a soft smile. "I'm fine, ma'am." She blinked, stunned by how polite he sounded after what he'd just done. She glanced at the bikers sprawled across the floor, then back at him. I'll get you a fresh burger." "No need," Marcus replied. "This one's just fine." A man sitting at the far booth, someone's grandfather with a farmer's tan and calloused hands, muttered, "I ain't never seen anything like that before." Marcus ignored the whispers spreading through the room. He knew what they were thinking. A calm man in a world full of noise stands out. People remember that. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few bills, placing them neatly under the edge of his plate. Then he rose from the booth, the sound of his boots the only noise in the room as he walked toward the door. The waitress watched him go. "Wait," she called after him. "Who are you, really?" Marcus paused with his hand on the door. He glanced back at her and held her gaze for just a second longer than expected. "Just a guy who knows how to finish his lunch," he said with a faint smile. Then he stepped outside, the bell above the door jingling faintly as it closed behind him. Outside, the gravel crunched under Marcus's boots as he made his way back to his truck. The wind had picked up, swirling dust around the parking lot, the afternoon light casting long shadows. The biker who had fled earlier stood near his motorcycle, staring at Marcus in shock. He didn't say a word. He just stepped aside as Marcus climbed into his truck. The engine roared to life, the sound breaking the stillness that had gripped the parking lot. Marcus put the truck in gear, glanced once in the rearview mirror at the diner and the people still standing inside watching him leave, then drove off down the empty road. As he drove, the landscape changed from the rugged diner surroundings to the open expanses of the highway, where the sky seemed to stretch forever. He allowed himself a moment to reflect, not on the fight, but on the reasons he'd learned to stay calm. Memories of his time in Delta Force came unbidden. The countless hours of training to remain composed in chaos, to see the situation not as a threat, but as a chessboard where every move mattered. The miles passed, and the sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Marcus turned on the radio, an old country tune playing softly, its melody soothing the road's loneliness. A few miles later, he pulled off at another small roadside spot, this time a gas station. He stepped out, stretched his legs, the cool evening air a welcome contrast to the diner's tension. Inside the gas station, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Marcus grabbed a bottle of water from the cooler, the condensation cold against his hand. The cashier, a teenage kid with headphones dangling around his neck, glanced up as Marcus approached the counter. "You headed somewhere important?" the kid asked, making conversation. Marcus smiled faintly, tossing a few bills on the counter. "Nope, just passing through." The kid nodded, his eyes catching something in Marcus's stance. "You military or something?" Marcus paused for half a second, then shrugged with a slight nod, acknowledging without confirming. "Just a guy getting water," he replied. He stepped back outside, water in hand, and climbed into his truck. As he pulled back onto the road, the cashier watched through the window, feeling something he couldn't quite describe. Respect, maybe, or curiosity. And like that, Marcus was gone. Another town. Another stretch of road. He didn't need recognition, didn't want it, but for everyone he left behind, his quiet strength spoke volumes. A reminder that you don't need to shout to be powerful. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who let their actions do the talking. Respect isn't earned through loud words or intimidation. It's earned through control, composure, and quiet strength. The people who seem the calmest are often the ones who fought the hardest battles. Never judge someone by what you think you see. As he drove, Marcus thought not of the stories that would spread or the whispers in the diner, but of the peace he sought after years of service. The road ahead was long, but it was his path, one where he could choose when to engage and when to simply pass through. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear this lesson, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us what really matters in life.